This podcast is sponsored by Magic Rock Brewing. Currently, you can get free delivery on all orders over £40 and 10% of all online orders by using our code of TakesThatChance10.
Jepson's there, Billy in, the goal, Chris Billy, Huddersfield Town. The most famous goal of Chris Billy's life. Is this the moment for Lee Fowler? It is. Take your place in Division 2, Huddersfield Town. Ruby and Steve Simonson's boots now. He's missed. Steve Simonson clears the flame of the goal and collapses in a heap of tears. Huddersfield Town are promoted. Mustafa Schindler has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Welcome to the Andy Takes That Chance podcast. Another double game week, another tumultuous pair of results. A mixture of thoughts has been running around our head quicker than a BBC broadcaster around Roundy Park on a crisp autumn Sunday morning. Joining me, Matt Shaw, on this week's podcast is a man who Weight Watchers are interested in signing as a spokesman on account of him shedding £10 every week. It's Dan Pozza-Porritt. A man who's gone from an agenda bender to an agenda mender. It's Richard Kosmala. And finally, our guest this week, a man who is known to his colleagues as the Kirkstall Cram, the Farnley Farrer, the Rothwell Radcliffe, and the Colton Co. Donning the spikes, it's BBC West Yorkshire Sport head honcho, Jonathan Buchan. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
All right.
Matt, what an intro. How can we live up to
Fantastic intro.
Johnny, take note, mate. Watch and learn.
There's
Hey,
one thing I picked up at the
notes.
weekend from Matt Glenn, and it was Johnny on his run.
Yeah, I'll make sure I don't get cramped this evening,
Anyway,
chaps.
I resisted the urge for Johnny on the spot jokes and all that. So
Yeah, Matt, it happened, mate. I seen a video. It did happen, unless it were old footage.
Yeah,
has anybody timestamped it? That's the thing. Yeah,
No.
Timestamp these things and prove it.
Jogged 10 yards, and then after that, it was all a walk. The rest of the 1K was a walk.
Sounds like Navisar or Diakabi in his peak.
Right, lads, so let's get in. We've got two games to get through this week. We've got Middlesbrough and Cardiff. So a good place to start will be Middlesbrough, a happier place. We will start. We're joined this week by Johnny, who has seen both games this week. You could hear his ramblings on BBC, well, not ramblings, musings, if you like, on BBC Radio Leeds. Sorry, Johnny. Middlesbrough. So for this, I thought it was a poor first 30 minutes. Middlesbrough got off to a good start, scored through Marvin Johnson on the left flank. And then an incredible miss by Britta Sombolonga. Johnny, you must have been a bit shocked when that came across, and he seemed to make that a bit harder than what it was. Unbelievable.
And it was only when we saw it back that you could sort of see how bad a miss it actually was. And the more times you see it, the worse it gets, doesn't it? He should have finished that 100 times out of 100, never mind 99 times out of 100. And it was ultimately, in the long run, wasn't it, a massive let-off if you think about it. I don't think he'll know how he's missed that still to this day.
I don't, Kosi, we don't often get much luck at Huddersfield Town, do we? But that seemed to be quite a fortunate start, and then we scored with pretty much the first moment that we had in the entire game. Carol Eiting, who I think was quite quiet for the first half an hour, but to me he was excellent in the last hour. He really sort of drove Huddersfield on from the centre of the park, and he seemed to find his range as well, a good passing range. And we've not really seen a player like this for a long time. And I'm not going to compare him to Aaron Moy like some people have done, because Aaron Moy up there, isn't he, with all the Baldy greats, Kosi. But it was a good performance from him, and he really drove Town on.
Yeah, before I comment on that, Johnny, did you hear Warnock's? What did he say after Sombolonga when he's effing and black? He must have been absolutely spewing.
Didn't hear it. I didn't hear it at the time. We were, at the moment that it actually happened, we were all within ourselves looking around saying, what on earth has gone on there? So I didn't take note of what he was doing at the time. I wish I had done now. I wish I'd have had a look to see how he was reacting, because like you say, he would have been absolutely bouncing. And he was throughout the entire game. But then again, Carlos Corberán gives him a good run for that, doesn't he? You know, he's always up and down and yelling around. You can hear him all over the place. I know we're going to talk about what it's like being in there a little bit later on in the hour, but yeah, you had a real battle between those two, I think, in terms of getting the point across at the weekend.
I've watched it back a few times, Matt. I don't know if Noah Whelan got it ground, because every time we scored, you just hear a guy goes, "Get in!" And that's all you've ever heard.
You know who that is? Do you want to know who that is? That is the pitch announcer.
Let's out him.
That is the pitch announcer.
I knew it was Rambo. I knew it.
Yeah,
I was going to say that.
He stands right behind us, and you can tell he takes real pleasure. I don't know him personally. He takes real pleasure from being able to be heard over the back of us by clapping
really
and giving it all that. Yeah. To be fair, it adds some atmosphere for us. That's what we need at the minute. It's better than it being a dead stadium, isn't it?
What was the question again, Matt? Carl Eiting, yeah, fantastic, mate. I mean, we'll talk about the other goal later on, but he was so pivotal in that Coroma goal as well in the game that won. He's just such a clever footballer. What I like about him, which he likes to ping a shot off, doesn't he? He's, I mean, he would have took a difficult chance that. When it came back to him, you thought, he won one of those, you think that's a goal, but he's not bothered.
Not a difficult save, though, really, was it, from Mr. Bettinelli?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would have been the boot on the other foot, and that would have been, God, one of our many keepers who it could have been maybe on the day. I'd have been a bit disappointed with that. But, yeah, I mean, like you said, Matt, we do need a bit of luck, and I think, yeah, you've got to, buy a ticket, win the raffle. He did that, but the guy at Fulham on it last year, wasn't great, but I mean, incredible. Borough had considered less.
He had an amazing game against us for Fulham.
Was that the one when we cocked up in last minute? Which game was it?
It could be any number of games.
At Fulham.
Yes, anyone.
Yeah. No, I like Eiting, and he looks like a man to me. He's there. He knows what he wants to do on the pitch. Seems a clever footballer. Just hopefully stays fit, but yeah, really, really good. And God, he doesn't even look. How old is he? Because he looks like he's about 12, doesn't he?
23, is he? 23-ish?
Yeah,
very 22, young, 23.
Yeah.
I know you do. I know you joked earlier there, Matt, about comparing him to Aaron Moy, but he's in that mould, isn't he? He's obviously nowhere near as good as Moy, but he's more probably like a Michael Collins, I'd say, at the moment. He likes to get forward on edge of box and then take a quick shot. I think he done it a couple, Stoke and obviously Middlesbrough. So I like him. He's my sort of player. I like players like that, though. So good luck to him. I
think Michael Collins will be happy with that, to be honest, Poz. But although Michael Collins gave us your Ronald McDonald moment, didn't he? So back in 2008, we'll come to another time, I'm sure. No, we'll talk about that another time. But since Neil's not on, Neil quite. Neil's a gentleman and gave up his spot on the podcast tonight for Mr. Buchan, so no pressure there, Johnny. So
dear, I didn't know that.
He would have been waxing lyrical about Isaac and Benza. So I'm going to turn the tandem. What's a 3-seated bike? I don't know what you would call that, but let's Poz, jump on the bike and tell us how good Isaac and Benza was on that day.
Yeah, he's carried on his good form from start of the season, hasn't he? As old Isaac is starting to finally show something that we paid all that money for. He's had a bit of a torrid time at town, and this season he gives you something a little bit better down wing, certainly on that flank. We won't say too much about fella on other flank because it's like comparing apples and oranges at the moment. But he can put in a decent set piece as well, I've noticed. There's a bit of a rugby union style run up to it, which I always find amusing. But he can put a decent ball in as well. So although general play is a massive improvement, it gives us a little bit more of a threat from set pieces and corners as well, which I think is something that we've been lacking. So yeah, get me a seat on bike and carry on, Isaac. Yeah, good stuff.
Fantastic. So the game itself, it kind of turned on its head very quickly, didn't it? So Middlesbrough looked good value for 1-0 after sort of almost half an hour, and then before you know it, we're 2-1 up, and everything, the whole world is looking rosy, isn't it? And I have to say, so the decision to award a penalty for Middlesbrough to me seemed ridiculous, to be blunt. It seems to me, I think Huddersfield Town, one of those under the radar sides that tends to be on the brunt of more bad refereeing decisions than good, to be honest with you. And this one for me, just we'll get Naby Sarr out of the way. There's no way Naby Sarr needs to slide there. That is just a ridiculous decision from Naby Sarr, because it puts something in the referee's head. It puts the potential of a penalty decision in his head. And we'll talk about Naby Sarr in a little bit as well. But Johnny, you must have seen in the ground that there was absolutely no contact there with. I think it was a Sambalonga, wasn't it?
It
went down, and it was a frustrating. It could have potentially been a frustrating end to that, because Town were excellent in that second half.
It was, I mean, Naby Sarr was on our side of Assombalonga. So from our side, in the initial view, it looked as though, well, he's clearly taking him down and it's clearly a penalty. But then you see it again. And I think there was some contact, but it would have been the most slight and briefest of contact, not in any way, shape or form worthy of a penalty or any way, shape or form worthy of him going down. Poor decision. I felt that was going to cost Huddersfield heavily, and then they showed resolve that they've not shown in certainly my time at Radio Leeds, fighting back from behind to get themselves ahead again just a couple of minutes later. So yeah, it wasn't a penalty for me. At the first time of viewing, I thought possibly could be, but then as soon as you see the replay, no chance.
I think how I look on stuff now and like that is, can you see why it given? We're all right. The good thing about iFollow is the much abused iFollow is you get a few replays on like Sky, and by the time you saw the second one, because I remember you, Johnny, at times saying that was a penalty, and I was thinking you've probably not seen what we'd seen. But
no, I hadn't. No,
but it's a wet afternoon. Neil Warnock's feeling aggrieved with stuff, and you don't like you said, Matt, you don't need ammunition to kind of give that decision. And disappointed. Never thought Schofield we're going to save, but I'm rubbish at guessing penalties. I remember, I'm showing my age, but Italian United when Peter Shilton, I'll never forget that journey. I thought he's got all that experience. He'll do well on this shootout. I mean, and every one of them, he were nowhere near. So, but yeah, I didn't fancy him saving it. And to be honest, then it looked only one winner there. So yeah, it was Huddersfield. I don't know how that happened. Really.
Yeah, and obviously we mentioned Carol Eiting, and he made that fantastic dummy run, didn't he? In behind the man that we're going to do this for again, because every time Josh Koroma scores, we assemble the fan club, don't we? So. There we go. It's probably a bit loud, but Josh Koroma again. I'm as you probably don't know, Johnny. I'm the president of the Josh Koroma fan club. So every time he scores, we assemble the fan club, if you like. So
love it. Waking up your kids.
He might actually. He probably won't even be asleep knowing him. But anyway, and again, Josh Koroma is a player who, last season we saw him. Last season we've seen Jonathan Hogg's post-match interview mention him as well, saying that he was carrying a bit of extra weight, and this season he's looking really lean, really quick. And that goal for me was it drew comparisons with Karlan Grant as well, just the way he cut in from that left-hand side and just rasped it into the bottom corner. And Poz, I jumped out of my seat. I've been a little bit ambivalent to some of the football, kind of been a bit like, I think, but that one was a real sort of out of your seat moment and exciting.
No, I agree, mate. I did exactly the same. I think even sent a message to someone to tell, wow, I've got excited about a goal. I'm one of them. I don't particularly like watching it on telly because you can't get fully involved, and when there's no crowd there, it's even harder sometimes. You've got your commentary from Radio Leeds, which is always great, so you get a feel for it. But there's no better than being there, is there? When you've just conceded a goal as well, and then you get one back within 5 minutes or so, it just kind of means that a little bit more. I always think like when you score a couple of goals in quick succession, you celebrate the second more than the first because you're on that high, and that to pull one back when you've come from behind once and you've sort of thrown it away with a stupid goal, to get that third, it were, like you say, it were an out of your seat moment. And I can imagine if we'd have been in Southampton there, because there'd have been a few limbs, as they say, the young and say.
Them Borough fans would have got it, wouldn't they? But I think one of the best things for me watching the goal back, desire from lads, 3, 4, 5 lads, wanting to get in the box, wanting to win the game, where I'm damn sure Danny Carley be like, right, 2-2 against the Borough, that's a good result. We won't forget what you were doing getting up
Danny
forward.
Cowley.
It was brilliant, and that as well. But then Warnock were talking out of his backside about a penalty. What were he on about there? That he would never seen a penalty that. But he thought when they were coming together, but that's what the referee said to him and that as well. But that wasn't a penalty at all. But yeah, brilliant goal. And again, there seems to be, the good thing is that I'm positive, I don't know about you, but over the years, it gets me so frustrated with Town. We don't shoot enough. How many times have we used to say that? But now, I think, to be honest, we do shoot a lot. And sometimes we're shooting a bit, which probably come up to last night's game a bit aimlessly. But yeah, he's not bothered, man. Sometimes Koroma has kind of got me frustrated, Matt. I know you've blown your own and what have you, but sometimes I do think he is a little bit too selfish. But I suppose, goal scorers would say, and people that like to do all that stuff, is that you've got a bit to do it, and yeah, really, keeper just stood there, didn't he? It was a great moment, and when I rung you, Johnny, after the match, my only regret were like Poz says, we couldn't be there, living it and drinking it in, and maybe hopefully do a few more of them when we get back in.
I think for me, what impressed me most about the goal was his composure. I don't know about you guys who will have seen him more than I have, but I got the impression that, and when I've seen him in the past, that's something he might have snatched at a little bit more, a little bit earlier. He wouldn't have necessarily waited those extra few seconds and taken that extra, drop of a shoulder and extra step right to kind of open it up a little bit. And for a young player to have that composure in that position late on in a game with the opportunity to win it, that was the most impressive factor for me, that he was able to just keep his head and finish it off really well. Technically and skill-wise, fantastic, but it was the mentality of it that he didn't think this is the last minute, this is the last chance for us to get a goal here. I'll have a bit of a snapshot. He took his time, took a breath, took a touch, opened it up, and managed to get a shot away. That was the most impressive part for me, and I think that bodes really well moving forwards as well for pressurised situations for the club. If he's on that field, he knows how to kind of deal with that now and has learned from it. Maybe.
Yeah, he was averaging 14 shots a game. 14 shots every goal before that, and it's now starting to dip a little bit. Is that which is great? Poz, you're going to wade in on that there.
Sorry, I was going to say I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it might have been Toffolo, but somebody made a run down outside and took
Eiting.
Took a couple of players away, which just created that space for him as well. Which again, Eiting, we talk about intelligent players. Sometimes I tell kids who I coach, just because you've not got the ball, don't mean to say that you're not influential. And actually, that just proves there. In fact, I might show them it on a video. That actually, not having the ball, sometimes you can be even more effective because you take your players away and creating that space. So a decent sort of team goal again.
We bet a good side on Saturday. It's as simple as that. It were a, I'm not saying standout moment and stuff, because Swansea were a great win as well, and Millwall, it's probably Swansea the best side we've beaten. But I thought to score 3 against Middlesbrough is a pretty good effort. This year's version of Middlesbrough is a totally different one. And what I liked about it, they, as expected, they were very physical. And then, the first half an hour, they maybe should have put the game to bed. But they didn't, and we just kind of grasped it. And again, another second half performance where we excelled. It just seemed to be a bit of a theme this year. We'll talk about last night. But overall, second half, we seem to come into our zone, which is good and shows maybe fitness and other good things, people, will to win and stuff like that as well. So, I was buzzing me on Saturday, as anyone who listened to Johnny's show after knew. And because it was a great win, we played well, there was a twist to the tail, and Warnock, as they say in Scotland, get it up, yeah.
I think
some
that
interesting
kind of
stats then from, maybe not so interesting, depends on your point of view. Sorry, Poz. But just some little things that we picked up. So Carol Eiting, when he scored, he became our joint top scorer for the season. Then Fraser Campbell scored, and then he became our joint top scorer as well. And then Josh Koroma, all three of them were level, and then Josh Koroma scored to get back out in front, which I thought was quite a curious and unusual thing to happen. This season, it's taken Campbell 14 games to hit 3 goals. Last year, it took him 30. He scored 3 goals in 34 games. So we've seen an improvement from Fraser Campbell already, which is good to see. And a great cameo as well from Reg, as he's known, Romani Edmonds Green. I thought that he showed real maturity in that game when he came on. I thought as centre back, Poz, we'll go to you, because his positioning, I thought, from crosses was excellent as well. He didn't hide. He read the ball. He read the situation. Read the game well, and I thought he had a very promising cameo.
I like him. Yeah, I like him. I know Steeman's. We've talked about Steeman, a lot on this podcast. Sometimes he gets a bit of unfair criticism. Sometimes he gets justified. But when Edmonds Green came on, it didn't faze me in any way. Sometimes, when your main centre half goes off and a young lad comes on, you get a bit nervous and stuff like that. But I actually like him. His positioning's good. He's pretty strong. He's going to make mistakes. I think a couple of times he maybe got caught trying to pinch a ball when he probably shouldn't, and got rolled a couple of times. But, he's still a really young lad, and he's still learning, and, he'll only get better by playing. But, yeah, as a centre-half, I'm not particularly worried if I see him in starting 11. So, yeah, fair play to him.
That would have involved the incident at the end, but it wasn't a penalty in my eyes. And the main one, it wasn't a penalty in the referee's eyes and that as well. I think we were some longer, wasn't it? But I didn't think that were a spot.
That was closer than the other one.
Yeah,
probably one actually.
But yeah, no job done. But the thing with this division, and we'll come on obviously last night, but I says to you, it would, before the game, it wouldn't surprise me if we lost 4-0 at Cardiff last night, because the division makes no sense. COVID football makes no sense. Carlos's changes didn't make much sense. And yeah, it was almost as if Middlesbrough never happened last night, wasn't it? Because we were bad, weren't we, last night? We were poor.
Let's move on to it, Koz.
Yeah, it's the first game, Matt, that I didn't think we were ever in the battle in the arm race. Just the old thing, really. Yeah, the arm wrestle. We're not in there. You do wonder, don't you, Wheels? Because it's a brittle squad, and kind of the way we play involves a lot of energy. So these back-to-back games, but I never felt we were going to win. Landed a blow, but we were his own worst enemy, really, and that as well. And they'd obviously beaten Luton 4-0. They were licking their lips, and we just laid down, and we were poor, weren't we? And I think that's as bad, maybe the worst performance of the season. Brentford accepted, but then you could maybe say they're the top team, good team. But yeah, just never felt we were in the game, and really disappointing, wasn't it, really?
Do you think this highlights a squad issue then? Because Matty Daly played left wing. There was a big sort of Rolando Aarons-sized hole, if you like, on the left wing, really. Schindler seemed to come back in quite soon, although Rahman, Emmons, Green, we would have thought may have been back three, which is something we predicted on the preview show, but weren't entirely convinced would happen, but obviously did. Do you think now we're coming up to this really busy time, do you think this might show a couple of holes whereby our squad is pretty wafer thin?
I think so, but the trouble is we're a team that's on us for second year's parachute payment where you haven't got any money, and you're not going to have decent backup, really, and that as well. I mean, Pippa's loss has been huge. Duane, really poor. I don't like to have a go at a kid who's played 14 games since he's ever signed and stuff like that as well. But to me, nowhere near good enough to be starting right back at Huddersfield Town FC. And I didn't have a problem with the goalkeeper thing. We'll come on to that obviously after. But yeah, he's just not a quality player. I mean, Bacuna, for much as his frustrations and stuff, he's still a good key kind of weapon for us. And him missing was another issue. I wasn't too bothered. Ward for Campbell I would have had on Saturday, never mind last night. But yeah, you look at the bench and it was woefully weak. But I just felt that their football were very direct. Long throw-ins, it were like going back to the 80s, 90s, wasn't it, and stuff that were proper slinging them in. But yeah, Kiefer Moore were class though. What signing he is?
Oh, Keith.
Yeah, good player. Not
Good
Keith
player,
Amor, yeah.
Keith Amor, as I thought he would call.
He'll move on for 20 million somewhere, mate. He'll move on for more than Grant will, in my opinion.
No, he won't. He's 28 years old. He's not moving on. I don't think.
Johnny, you're there in the stadium. You were there last night, as I understand it. So
he wasn't though. He was in studio.
I wasn't last night.
Oh,
last night I was cheating. I was having to do.
Apologies.
I was having to struggle along with iFollow like you guys last night. Yeah, Cardiff, the way it was working at the minute is we would obviously send a presenter and our commentator and a pundit. But the individual clubs at the moment, due to social distancing, can tell us whether we're allowed 2 or 3 passes. Right. Cardiff, unfortunately, said to us, you can only have 2 because you're English, or something like that. So, yeah, unfortunately, I mean, I didn't have to go all the way to Cardiff, but I would have loved to have gone. I do still, even in the current times without fans in there, it's still, great to be at it as opposed to being in the studio. You just don't get the same feeling for it. But I struggled away with iFollow like you guys all did. I think Kiefer Moore was fantastic. I don't know if he'll ever go for the same money as Karlan Grant, in my opinion. I watched him quite a bit when he was at Rotherham as well, I think, or Barnsley. And I think he's a good player. He's a bit of a Peter Crouch beast, isn't he, in some ways? A bit of an anomaly. People struggle to deal with him. I just think that Cardiff have a very good experienced championship side and a good experienced championship manager as well, don't they? Let's be honest. And I think that's what came across last night. I think a few people said to us after the game on the show that they felt that Town were bullied out of the game, and I kind of agree with them on that. I think what this Town side does lack at times is a bit of punch and a bit of fight. And the guy who has it, Jonathan Hogg, who has all that fight and punch in him, it's sometimes misdirected and he sometimes gets away with it and sometimes he doesn't. And that isn't undermining what he does and how important he is to the team. But what I'm saying is I don't think there are enough people who have half of what Jonathan Hogg has in terms of that fight and battle. I don't know. It's not a personal attack on them. I just think it's a physicality thing. I don't know what you guys think about the physicality of this side at the minute.
I think you're right there, Johnny. And we spoke very similar against Wycombe. They were very similar. They were physical. And actually, if you look at how we lined up last night, as you mentioned, Johnny Hogg is probably one of the, a few that will stick a tackle in, and actually playing him in position that he played him in last night, so I almost took him out of the game to enable him to make any difference, because it certainly looked like to me, not only were he playing in the back three, you were almost like an old school sweeper.
Yeah.
So I think Carlos, they're looking at, are we getting caught on break? Do we need someone in there that can break it up, a little bit further down the field? There were certainly 2 or 3 occasions where it kind of shocked me at first, so I sort of paid a bit more attention to what I usually would about where players are. Because I thought Johnny Hogg was playing centre back, but he's really deep, and a couple of times he made that 10-15 yard run forward, and then almost thought, bloody hell, I shouldn't be here, and he sort of backpedaled. And I think what happened then is it took a lot away from your midfield. You kind of use Johnny Hogg as a bounce board in some respects. So you sent the midfielder, picks it up, you drop it off to Hogg, and they then move forward. They didn't have that little backwards pass last night because Hogg were so far behind. If you'd played it to him, you're knocking it 20, 30 yards behind you. And I think that didn't really solve the problem in defence, but it also created another problem in midfield. So for me, that didn't particularly work last night. I look through the squad, and as you said, I don't think you've got Fraser Campbell who sort of puts himself about, but again, sometimes that can be really misguided. It probably frustration sometimes more than anything else, and he tends to give a lot of silly free kicks.
He always gets a stupid booking, doesn't he, for Campbell?
He does. He always sort of pushes someone over the corner flag or something.
Yeah, stupid.
So I think the more physical teams that we do play against, we do struggle. I think you're dead right there, Johnny.
I think the problem as well is that you've got. I think the hardest thing for us is Carlos knows his players, because I know Neil were vocal last night. We had a little bit of a chat last night, and he made too many changes to key players. But the only thing I'd say is game in, game out, you change, game every 3 days, it seems, and maybe some of these guys had a niggle and just weren't kind of right and that as well. But it was the first game I thought that 2 down, we were dead. We were done. We were dead, mate. Once Sarr and Eamon did a Lol and Hardy act at the back, and that were it. You could have put another channel and we were finished. And I just look around, because that's where you do need. I just wondered if we need Poz a different. I put Matt Glennon on spot after on Saturday. Said, "What would you do for January?" He said, "I'd only bring a striker in, but and that I just want. Do you know a different type of player, Poz? Because I just think Ward's better with back to goal and more of them and Campbell is, but I just feel maybe we lack a bit of pace up there, or something different, mate, that you could have slung off bench. I mean, you were saying why didn't he sling kind of youth on last night? But he just, I don't know, it's
a tough one, because you've got to bring a. It depends how they want to play, doesn't it? I know we've got sort of to discuss Carlos in a little bit more depth, later on, but. If you're looking to bring that big man on to hold it up, you're almost going a little bit old school. Do you go a little bit more direct? Does he, bring it down on his chest, play it wide, spin off, and then look for a cross into the box? To me, we don't seem to play that sort of style. We want to sort of move it around and play it in behind the fullbacks. So for me, I'm not having someone like that on, like a Steve Mounier or an Andy Booth type. It don't surprise me when they haven't sort of got anyone like that, because we don't really want to play that style. In saying that, though. You've got to have better than Ward and than Campbell. Ward were the main target, allegedly. I know he's been injured and only just come back, but if that last night,
decent chance he had in first half, wasn't it? That was a decent opportunity. Matt, what the cock up with the goal? At first it was Sarr.
Which one?
Maybe the one with Sarr, but Eamon's pass were awful, wasn't it? And I just wondered if maybe it was more Eamon's fault than Sarr. I felt a bit sorry for him, really, because. He goes back to the other guy, just pressed him, and all right, you're thinking put it out for it, but we never do. But I think Eamon went nuts with Sarr, like swore. You could hear him there because I had a feed on last night. I had no commentary on, so you could hear him went, But I'm just thinking, Ben, you caused that as much as Sarr. Yeah, did you agree?
I had 2 trains of thoughts with this one, Cos. I had 2 trains of thought. So the first thing I saw really was when I watched it, I was like, Naby Sarr, what are you doing? You've made an absolute monstrosity of that. And then I saw Poz's tweet, which said Ben Hamer's got to do better than that. And my initial thought was, bollocks, pause. When I saw it, and I said that to you.
That's what most
WhatsApp,
people
pause.
say when I say,
And then I thought, you know what? And I thought, I'll watch it back. So I watched it back, and when I watched it back, there were two things that stood out. One of them was the type of pass that Ben Hamer tried to do was a very whip. You bring your right leg around your hip. That kind of whip pass, and he didn't put enough strength on it to get to Naby Sarr, so it was under hit. So, which I didn't pick up on the first time. The second time was the distance between Hamer and Sarr. And I think Sarr is too far away from Ben Hamer as well. So it's both of them to a point. But I would imagine Ben Hamer's going, what are you doing all the way over there when I'm down at this side of the box? In terms of goalkeeping, if your goalkeeper's that far side of the box, don't go stand up on the touchline over there, because the sort of chance of error, if you like, the further away, it's all about percentages. Naby Sarr has to come shorter to get that ball, because you can't just whip it. Is it a natural
reaction though, Matt, for somebody like Naby Sarr? Because
he's probably drilled to go stand on the point on the corner of the box.
I agree what you're saying. As we're trying to play this new style, it should be that keeper's going to get it, I need to go to this sort of position. But
I think he's gone to a reset point.
First thought is he seeing that ball come back to Hamer, and he's thinking, do you know what, he's just going to put his foot through this, because that's what would generally happen, isn't it? Let's be honest. In local leagues, I
don't think we do
is
that.
Is it a case of the style's just not fully embedded yet, or is it just a case of laziness or tiredness, or
I think, to be honest, I think he's just gone back to a reset point, if you like. So if Ben Hamer's in the middle of the goal, I think that's where he stands. So Schindler goes on one the point of the penalty box, and Sarr goes on the other. So it's like he's gone back, and he's in his head, he's gone back to the reset point. But Ben Hamer's 15 yards further or 10 yards maybe further that way. So he needs to drop 10 yards off for me to make that gap, to make that gap consistent. So there's two things really. It's a bad pass, and I think he's stood in the wrong place. So I'm gonna
copy Matt Glennon on this one, who last night said Hamer has to take some responsibility. But Hamer has to take the responsibility on as in, you can be told by coaches all you like that this is how we now play. We play it out from the back. We play it to the centre halves. We don't bump it long. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. Repetition, repetition, repetition. But ultimately, he's the one out there with the ball coming to him. And he's the one who can look up and see where Sarr is, and whether Sarr's in the right position, like you say, or whether he's too far away. That's another point to talk about with Sarr. But when that ball comes to Hamer, he should not be playing it to Sarr in that position with the player, the Cardiff player, bearing down on him as he was. Sarr then makes an absolute meal of it, but in my opinion, I'm going to go with Matt Glennon and say you've got to just go for it there and get rid. You've got to, if your boss has a go at you afterwards, then you can look back on the video at a later point and go, this is why I did that. Yeah. This is why he was in the wrong position there, and that's why I had to go long. And then you absolve yourself, don't you, and go, well, he was in the wrong position. But you can't be playing those sorts of balls. And this is the thing with the style that you will see under Carlos Corberán. And when you're talking about, having another different option on the bench, you ain't going to have it, chaps. Because if he is a disciple of Marcelo Bielsa, which we know he is, if plan A isn't working, you do plan A better. You don't have a plan B. You keep going and you keep going and you keep going. And unfortunately, what you will find is some players in this squad won't be able to consistently play that style and get it right time after time, as we saw maybe with the Hamer pass and with the Sarr error as well. So it's you're going to have these moments where these issues are going to be created, and you've just got to hope that a lot of the time you get away with them, or that over time they get less and less and less as these players become more and more accustomed to what they're expected to do under Carlos. 15 games in now? So they're still in a very steep part of the learning curve, I would argue, a lot of these players.
I think with these, we've all played like even five-a-side, and sometimes you let goals in, you just like in a game that might, and you think we can come back from this. But the first goal again was an absolute deflating goal, because Duane let the guy just steam straight past him, and Schindler, who Stephen Chicken wrote an interesting article today, I agree with him. Just not the man he was whatsoever. And Sarr, I don't know who were meant to pick him on, but it were poor with that, wasn't it? Yeah. And then the second one it kills you, doesn't it? You just you're reeling from that, thinking, bloody hell. And then that happens, and just there's no real coming back, I think, from them type of goals. If more smashes went in from, 40 yards, or Ojo, Alec Wilson, or someone like, you're like, okay, but
All three of them were. All three were naff, mate. Because the way Romani Edmonds-Green gets rolled on the third is really poor as well.
Yeah,
I'm not going to lay into Romani Edmonds-Green because he had a great debut, and I want to focus on that really than that goal. And to be fair, he's got to come and try and get the ball. We're losing 2-0. He's got to try and intercept, but it's a learning curve really.
Move on from Cardiff, Matt.
It brings us in nicely into sort of the Carlos discussion that Jonny makes about. If plan A is not working, can we do plan A better? One of my Chester fans mates replied to me when I put that tweet out about it being Ben Hamer's fault, and he said exactly that. Jonny, Bielsa's philosophy is you're a lot less likely to concede without the ball, with the ball, than you are with it. And I sort of replied, well, yeah, you are, but as long as your centre half don't fall over in 6 yard box. But I fully agree, and I've seen a lot of that with Carlos. It is plan A. It's nice when it works. We don't always see it. I think we talk about this new revolution and style of play and all that sort of stuff. And again, it's easy to compare it to when Wagner took over because sort of the hype around Carlos coming in were very similar. Do we see every single week? Do we see that style? For me, no, we don't. There's been a few games this season where we've not really implemented it as well as what we probably could. I mentioned on here before, the planned goals look really good, where we start, as Matt says, from the reset point and we play pass A, pass B, player runs to C. And, those goals look really good, but I still think we're really struggling to create anything, ad hoc where we sort of win the ball back.
The thing that seems to change to me, Poz, obviously Pippa's been injured, but the early 5, 6, 7 games to me were Toffolo and Pippa were massive, but you don't see that as much now. I mean, last night it started down with Toffolo, and then a bit like some of the other games, they kind of got on him, and that was it. Obviously, Duani's not Pippa, and there were nothing coming kind of from the right, so he does seem to have gone in the middle a little bit. And we have had some joy, but to me, that early style where we were bombing forward and wing backs and what have you, that seems to have kind of stopped.
I think a couple of teams probably took by surprise early doors as well, because it was such a different style to what we used to play under Cowley. You've got to think a new manager's coming, no one's seen us play. So did we, his first sort of 5 games were probably a little bit of a shock factor. Coming back to Carlos, for me though, you've got when you've got a team like Town at the moment, you've probably got, for me anyway, he's got sort of 3 options. You can either change his style of play to suit his players that he's got. You have to try and make the existing players better, or you bring better players in. So for me, number one, changing style of play. I don't think he will, because as Jonny says, he's a Bielsa man, so he'll learn pretty much everything from him, who doesn't change the style of play. Make existing players better. When? There's no time. We're playing games all the time. So when can you say, right, this week we'll work on X? You can't, because you've played, you have a recovery day, massages, a bit of gym work, then you start moving on to your tactics for next. There's no time to actually work on it. And then getting more players in, you've got to wait till January, and then B, does he want new players? We're hearing things that he thinks the squad's decent enough. There's all right, maybe Aaron's coming in, but for me, we need a lot more than that. Again, time will tell on that one. My sort of worries are, if it were me, I'd probably try and mix the style up a little bit. So as we've said, like looking at your games like against Cardiff and Wickham, do we go a little bit more direct? Do we sort of know when to play the style and when not to play the style? Again, a good manager can look at that and sort of instill that into his players. My worry is that he won't do that. He will just continue to do plan A. And can we do plan A better? Well, for me, what if we can't? There's got to be a breaking point. I've said it before and here again, and I think this season is a full transition season. It's easy to sit and say that now, but when you've just watched a match and you get caught up in the emotion of it, or you get a little bit angry. And I think as long as we can tread water, say, not go down from what I've seen of us, I think we'll have a lot more Middlesbroughs and we'll have a lot more Cardiffs. And I think as long as we can just pick up enough to stay up, I think we'll do all right. I do think Carlos is probably getting a little bit of a free ride at the moment, because the football, when it is good. Under Cowley, you could argue results were very similar, but the football were bad. So, you take the better performances instead of the results kind of thing. But at the end of the day, results are the bread and butter. I don't know what you guys think about that, but yeah, it's a little bit more enjoyable, but it's so much more frustrating for me because we seem to be so close yet so far away.
We're 8 off playoffs, Poz, we're 8 off relegation, but let's be honest, mate. I had a few Leeds fans kind of come at me on Saturday saying, "Oh, top 3 are done, but maybe a playoff spot." It'd frighten the hell out of me Huddersfield Town getting anywhere near Premier League anytime soon because Johnny, you just said it. We've said it for a few weeks. There's guys there who are just not good enough to do what Carlos wants them to do. It's as simple as that. And we know the big earners are still your Pritchards and people like that, the Akabe. They're not. We need to ship them out in the summer. We know August 2021, you'll see your Carlos lineup and your best Huddersfield Town. And so I'm kind of pleased to see the progress. Where we are 8 off top 3, 8 off top 6.
I think you're in line with what the club are thinking as well, Kosi. And I think that, the whole mantra around bringing, from my understanding, Carlos in was to be greater than the sum of your parts. So to make the team better by making all your individual bits work better at those individual bits. And that doesn't mean going out and buying loads of players. Now, it doesn't mean they won't go out and add a sprinkling in. It doesn't mean they won't decide, you know what, we do need more down the left, or we do need more up top, or whatever. It doesn't mean that Phil won't open that checkbook and go and do some business. But I think what you say, Poz, about the fact that you're in the middle of a season and when are you going to make these players better, that's when you're making them better, by playing them time and time again, because you can guarantee Hamer and Sarr probably won't make that same mistake again. So that's one thing that you would like to think that they've ticked off and gone, okay, we've learned from that scenario. And whether that is that Hamer next time goes long, or whether it is that Sarr's actually in the position he probably should be in, whichever one of those is corrected, doesn't matter really, does it, as long as it's corrected. Leeds at times got away with absolute suicide football at times, when they were playing in and around the edge of their area, but they got away with it. Sometimes they didn't. Most of the time they got away with it. And you've got to remember, they didn't go up the first year under Bielsa. It took 2 years for them to get there under Bielsa. And it took a global pandemic, some would argue as well, for them to get there under Bielsa. So I think next season is what, all the eggs are in the basket, aren't they, for next season from everybody at the club, whether that's Phil Hodgkinson, whether that's Lee Bromby, Carlos, the players. And I think this year they will look at it and go, right, which of these are the ones that we actually do think can be a part of this plan A, and which are the ones that we think we need to bring in some other players to play that role instead. I think they'll look at that quite heavily in the summer. You'd like to think so anyway, wouldn't you? If as you guys say, it ends up in a transitional season and you finish mid-table somewhere.
Matt, what do you think? Because I get feeling sometimes you're a bit not all that with Carlos, where we're...
Can you hear me okay? I've switched.
Yeah.
I've switched that. I thought my microphone was causing my laptop to lag, so I've switched to a headset. But no, I do. I like Carlos a lot. I love the style of play. I love. I find him difficult to listen to, because he's very sort of business, and I'm not really seeing it's really pathetic. This, I know it's X Factor generation, but there's not much of a personality come out just yet. Do you know, like David Wagner was quite charismatic and charming and great to listen to, and whereas Carlos is just very sort of straight business. Do you know what I mean? And I don't mind that to a point, but I did prep something on this, which my question really is: has Carlos Corberán hit a speed bump, or is there something deeper? I think it's good to look at things objectively. I'm a fan of Carlos so far. I'll always stick up for Carlos at this present moment in time if someone goes in at him, because I understand what he's trying to do. I like what he's trying to do. I like where he's trying to go, and I'm on board with the vision that he's selling. I think it's good to look at games in bunches of 6. All the form guys tend to look at them in 6. So when you look at our last 6 games since Millwall, which is the 7th, we've played 6. We've won 1, which many will argue is a lucky one. Drawn 2, lost 3, and that's a decrease on the previous 6, which was 3 wins, 1 draw, 2 defeats. So results have taken a bit of a dip in that moment. And it's not so much that the results have dipped, it's the performances in them as well. So like I say, I love the style of play. And I can forgive the errors at the back as well, because for every Sarr falling over and Stokes at Pereira, there's that wonderful goal at Derby, or there's other ones. So I'm quite happily, obviously you don't like conceding, but I'm on board with the style. But sometimes it feels like when a game's not going our way, it's like rugby league, Kosi, you put rugby league on the agenda further down, didn't you? And it's such a game of momentum, isn't it? Where all of a sudden one team builds up a head of steam and they're hard to stop. In football, it's never like that, but it feels like when the other team have a momentum, Carlos kind of stutters a little bit, and it's where he needs to change the game, and he doesn't change much. like Jonny says, he sticks to plan A. And if plan A is not working, the whole thing's not working, the game gets flipped on the head. And we've lost a lot of games from, well, not a lot, but we've lost an unusual amount of games from winning positions, in terms of the sample size. So my question is Carlos good at affecting a game which is going on? To me, it looks great at setting a team. I know this is going to draw unfavourable comparisons and people are going to throw pelters at me for this, but it reminds me a little bit of Lee Clark in that he could set a team up brilliantly. He could line everything up great, line the pieces up, but when things were happening in front of him, obviously we've got 3 years of Lee Clark to draw on for this, but when things were happening in front of him or when things went wrong, he had no idea what to do to change what was going on in front of him. And in the last 6 games, there's been a couple of occasions where I've gone, I know Preston was a bit further back, but we won up against Preston, ended up losing 2-1, and you could just see the shift. Cardiff last night, you could just see they'd won the arm wrestle, and that was it. The shift, that was it. There was no sort of coming back.
Well, how many times have you conceded goals back to back within 5-10 minute periods?
Yeah, that's another thing. Preston did it to us. Bristol City did it to us.
Birmingham, did Birmingham do it as well?
No, they scored they scored straight back after we scored, didn't they? But there's
been a couple though, hasn't there? Yeah. And does that suggest what you're saying there about that stutter, that hesitation to change things? And actually, the irony of that is that it's something that Carlos has spoken about quite a bit in his press conferences recently, that his players need to get better at being able to adapt to different situations in the game. He said about coming from behind and winning from behind. That was one of the things ahead of this run of nine consecutive games, very quickly condensed. He said one of the factors we spoke about was at some point we will be behind in a game and we need to show that we can turn that around and win a game. Now, they did that against Middlesbrough, obviously, but he's talking about different scenarios that they need to learn to overcome. And maybe you're right, Matt. Maybe he needs to learn to overcome some of his own as well as his players.
Yeah, this is not a dig at him by any means.
It's
we've brought in an under-23s coach who is not the finished article, and I'm just sort of seeing one or two little bits where I think maybe he could do. And who am I to question Carlos Corberán for a start? But there's just a couple of bits whereby you kind of think, and I believe in him. I'm fully 100% behind Carlos Corberán and what he's doing. There's just been a couple of occasions now where you just think, is he a principled idealist, if you like, and say, right, this is how we're playing and we're going to do it from minute 1 to 90? Whereas I know someone's mentioned that there should be a swear jar for Kosi every time in the comments, every time he mentions Danny Cowley, and I'm on board with that because we'll be absolutely loaded if Kosi has to chip a quid in every time he mentions Danny Cowley. But if one of Danny Cowley's great strengths was that he could alter a game going on in front of him. He could break games down into quarters, like West Brom, fantastic 4-game of quarters there. And he could, not so much set a team up to go, but he could alter everything. Whereas when things are going against us, I'm struggling to see us changing a game. But my question mainly is that down to Carlos, or is that down to the players that he's been given? And has he been given? He hasn't been sold short as such, but I don't think he's got as strong a squad as the previous manager has.
I think a lot of that might come down to the fact that it's his first season in senior football, and actually results do matter. Whereas in under 23s, you are trying to build an ethos, a style of play, and if Town under 23s lose to Doncaster under 23s 4-0, but they've played it out front back every single time for 90 minutes and they've got better at that, you'd say, yeah, great, it's a development game. As soon as you come into first team football, It's not the time to develop. Yeah, you can practice and you can get better at stuff, but ultimately, coming off losing 4-0 against Doncaster and saying, yeah, but we've played it out front back every time, don't cut it anymore. And I think where you're saying about changing a game is not ever really probably had to use that.
Sorry there, Poz. I
just feel like I've
Carlos out, and I'm not meant to do that. I'm just meant to point out that there are little things, because I'm a fan of his, but there are just those little things whereby we need to make a few more changes during the game.
No, I fully agree, man. I don't think you dug him out at all. I thought it's probably, I dare say he's probably not listening, but it's constructive criticism.
I hope he's not.
For me, it's reasoned, and you're not just having a pop for the sake of it. And I do genuinely think he's still finding his feet. We've only had, I think, 15 games.
Yeah,
Johnny says, and there's a massive, massive difference between development football and first team football, let alone at championship level, where you could argue it's still one of the top 10 quality leagues in Europe. So I think it's as much as it's a transition season for the club, it's also a massive transition season for him, and he's got to learn. And I'm very similar to you, Matt. I think we share similar views. We used to like the man who shall not be named, so we have to put money in a swear jar now. We liked some of the things that he could do, but now we also like.
I like Jan Seaver, mate. I don't know if I'm the person you should speak to about that.
If we could combine maybe the two qualities together, then we'd probably have a very good, decent manager. And I think in time it will come.
The thing that worries me, and he's fascinating for me, and I don't want to kind of bring it out when we're going to talk about when we get back in. I'm fascinated to see how it's going to pan out, because I think some of our fans are sort of very impatient. Get it forward. I've mentioned it before, but that Luton, when kind of Camille got kind of bullied into stop doing what.
That was just you as well, Kosi, was that? What's everyone else going to be like?
But will Ben Hamer, get it forward. Bloody rubbish, sir. Stop passing it. We're 1-0 down. We're patients. We're sat in a supper. We can't do much. But do you know that thing? Will the Huddersfield public adopt to this? I mean, we've seen it on his TV. That's going to be fascinating to me, because I do worry about that. And will it make people change? Because I don't think it will, because obviously they'll be dropped if they don't follow the game plan. But I can't wait to get him back in the ground for starters. But when it does, I just wonder how it's going to go down, because we do like get it at him and kind of Andy Boo type, all that stuff. Yeah. This is continental sexy football. And will the Jonny, I suppose, throw it to you. What would it at Leeds early on, when he maybe were kind of embedded? How did it go down there? Or did people just think, we're sick of bad managers, this guy's got a track record, trust him?
I mean, Leeds never had a point where they were, at the bottom end of the Championship struggling, or the threat of that wasn't ever really there. And I think, and this is something that I've spoken about before on air, is the difference is that Marcelo Bielsa, is known worldwide and respected worldwide, and that buys him a bit more time with supporters, with players, with all aspects of the game. Whereas you look at Carlos and you do wonder, don't you, 23's coach, how much will people give him that time, both on the terraces and those people? How much will they give him that time? The players, how much will they buy into what he wants to do? They seemingly all have done at the minute, so that's not a criticism there. But I think that you're right in many ways, that when fans get back in, it's going to be more fascinating than it is right now, Kosi, because I think you're right. I think many people who have been going down there to John Smith or even to Leeds Road beforehand are used to seeing something nowhere near what this is actually going to be like. And do they have the patience to be able to see it out if the results aren't going, for the club? And like I said, with Leeds, everyone bought into it because they got to the playoffs first year and just lost out. And then the second year, they were flying all the way through. So they bought into it. If you were flying at the minute, if you're in the top 6, you'd all go back and you'd all absolutely be flying, I reckon, and everyone would be right behind it. But you're right. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if and hopefully when, sometime soon, you guys are all back in there.
Yeah, I want to talk about that now, because I put a poll out, and obviously as we speak now, we'll get some games on with 2,000 fans in. But Matt, you just wanted to finish off of there on that little discussion before we talk fans?
Yeah, the only thing that I wanted to say was really my point all along, and I know I waffled quite a lot, was it's about trying to balance your ideals and results at the same time. Because I think if you go 100% ideals, your results don't follow. People are going to start to question, and I don't really want that for him. I want us to play great football and us to win games, obviously, like everyone does. And I just think that maybe a couple of times he might, like the Stoke game. The Stoke game was, like, to quantify what I was saying. From minute one, Jonathan Hogg was pressed by the number 10, Nick Powell, and he absolutely smothered us, and we tried to play out from the back. Hogg got pressed every time without fail, and we never changed it during the 90 minutes, and we conceded a lot of ground and a lot of possession, and it's just little tweaks that need to appear. But I think that will happen the more that he knows the players and the more that he can get them on the training ground, and the less that we're playing Saturday, Tuesday. I just wanted to discuss that as a broader term. But Kosi, you can... I'll stop waffling about Carlos now, and I'm still on the Carlos train, don't worry.
I sent a tweet out today, copied our old friend Mr. Clemens in, who liked it, because his Carlisle team, the first people to open their turnstiles, thank God, since March, and let's hope that's gone well. I'm sure there'll be kind of updates in the press. But I put a little poll out on our Twitter feed saying, how was you feeling about having a chance to get back in, just in the, if we do miraculously get to tier 2 anytime soon, or even 1. God, that would be amazing, wouldn't it? And it was really interesting. It's really split. 43% said get me back in. 41% says not bothered until we can get all back in and away fans, etc. And 16% said unless there's a vaccine, they're not kind of risking it. But I suppose, John, it's coming straight to you, really. It's month after month now of this kind of scenario. It must you must be just thinking, God, how bad is it? Not being
it's, and I don't want to sound really like sycophantic here and make it sound like I'm saying this just for the sake of saying it, because I'm not. It is absolute garbage without the fans in the ground. It really genuinely is. At first, it was a bit of a novelty when we didn't know how long it was going to go on for, and obviously we'd had the season all shut down, so we were just relieved to be back broadcasting from games and being able to have some football back on to watch and to provide for everybody as well. So we were just pleased to be back in, and it was a novelty that was back end of last season. Now it feels like a bit of a drag sometimes, because you thrive off that, and particularly for the commentators, I know they're all struggling to get that atmosphere. That's why I was joking earlier about the guy who talks over the PA standing behind us and clapping and shouting about everything. And Dave Throwfall Sykes won't be disappointed, I'm sure, to say that he sits over my left-hand shoulder at the John Smiths, and he's very vocal throughout the game as well, and that provides us with some kind of at least background atmos. You don't get any of the intensity, you don't get any of the atmosphere, you don't get any of the adrenaline. Usually a midweek game, I'd come home and it'd be 2 a.m. before me, even at a home game, be thinking about going to sleep because of that adrenaline, that combined energy that is within the stadium. And now that's not the case. And it does, I think it's having a huge impact on results. I think it's having a huge impact on players. I don't think they'll say this, but I think it is. And I think it's been shown in
Johnny,
the way that we've seen such a topsy-turvy season. Go on.
Johnny, I'll stop you there. I mean, I won't bore him, but I watched him this afternoon with Spanish football manager, one of the top teams, and he says he knows some of his guys are like 30%, 40% less intense. He sees it on a match day. He says he can't wait for fans to come back in, and that he says that is absolute fact. His team, because it's all about intensity and kind of heavy metal football, a bit like Klopp and what have you, but it's just not the same team without the fans. And I just wonder how we talked about their style and stuff, but I just, some of the games I watch, I think average players kind of will just excel and stuff like that as well. I think your top players will always be top. I mean, like, God, I watched Thomas Muller last night and he was still brilliant, man, even though there's no one in, because he's just A-lister, isn't he? But some of the average players, that rely on that. Even hatred, mate. The people are getting abused and stuff. That drives you on. So but will 2000 do it? I know we've got to start somewhere, Johnny. But
and this is the thing for me, and I fully appreciate that people just want to be back in, and fully respect that, and do not underestimate how privileged I've been to be able to go and watch some football over these last few months, and how much it is absolutely killing people who have, not because they've paid for the season tickets, because it's not about the money for all of you. I know it's not, but the fact that it is your lifestyle, and it's more, let's be honest as well, a lot of it's just about seeing your mates, isn't it, on a Saturday afternoon and going for a few beers before and a few beers afterwards and letting off a bit of steam. And the football is not secondary, but the football is certainly just one part of what is an entire day for everybody. But from a footballing perspective, I'm kind of with those who said, you know what, until everyone's back in, I'm not really that fussed, because for me, that having 2,000 people in the John Smiths or in Ellen Road or down in Cardiff or wherever it might be, it's really not going to have that big an impact. I've covered under 21s games, I've covered under 23s games, I've covered League Two games and Checker Trade games where 800 people turn up for it, and it doesn't have an impact. So for me, the sooner we can get everybody back in, the better. But obviously that has to be safe, and you would probably think now we're looking at very, very back end of this season, probably the start of next season, aren't we, before it's going to be full houses again.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of the one thing to cling on to is Australia. I know obviously their COVID system's better, but I saw something today where full stadium, like in pretty much every sport, which is fantastic. And
I can't wait. I genuinely cannot wait for knowing that we're going to a game, and wherever it might be, whatever club it is covering, just knowing that it's going to be a full house again. That it will be. Everyone's looking forward to that. It's going to be such a great day, isn't it? When they say, we're back open again across the board, it's just going to be absolutely brilliant.
It is positive. I mean, you're like that.
It's going to take a while, Johnny. If you need someone to carry your microphone in, you've got a spare parts. I'm sure one of us will be able to.
Absolutely.
If you need a guest summariser, if you've Glenn, in fact, is be able to cut hair again now, won't he, on a Saturday?
He is. He is. So, I think he'll still be cutting hair right now. He'll be working 15-hour days.
He needs to cut Matt's hair. Poz, how do you feel though, mate? Because obviously you're instrumental in that South Standard. My guess is that you're not too arsed until we can all get back in. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah, no, mate, you're spot on. Until it can be, it doesn't have to be every, full house and that, but more than sort of 2,000, because if not, you just lose it. To me, it becomes more of almost like going to theatre, because there's it's going to be a little bit weird. Everyone's spread out. Are people going to get up and stand and shout and bawl and sing and clap? Will they just go sit and watch? So I think as an atmosphere with 2,000 in, it's probably just going to be the same as nobody in. You need to get sort of at least 50%, if not more, in there to make it anything like what a normal match day would be. But the vaccines allegedly being rolled out as of next week. I think as we move into get past Christmas, moving to spring, you'd hope that infections will come down, as they do with sort of every viral sort of disease that we've got going on. The thing for football is after summer, cases probably drop. Vaccines kicked in. We've probably got up until August, a traditional starting point. You've got a long. If we write this season off, you've still got 8 months. And in 8 months, God, you'd hope that we could all get back in as of first weekend in August. Fingers crossed, anyway.
Yeah,
I mean, there's different calls in there for different people. That you could always, depending on what it is, do people want to go, do people not? And people will start having to make their own choices. I think way at world has been for the last 12 months, we've been very much dictated to what we can and can't do. But at some point, they're going to have to open it back up, and then it's up to people to make their own decisions. And we'll see what happens with that. But
be interesting.
Yeah.
Matt, I just want to ask you something now. So kind of moving on to the next part. I don't watch much Premier League football, but I was absolutely shocked on what I saw
you're looking at the wrong person if you want me to. If you talk about
Sunday.
Premier League football, I don't watch.
I watched Arsenal. I watched a bit of Arsenal Wolves on Sunday, and Raul Jimenez. I'm not a gory person anyway, so I'll look away on stuff like that as well. But it were absolutely horrendous what happened. If anyone's seen the incident with the head injury, but what
the sound? It's the sound, isn't it?
What was the most horrendous thing after? David Luiz, who were obviously we're not there, so we were clearly not right. There's no way on God's earth he should have come back on that pitch for me. And the fact that he was subbed off at half time, to me, proving it. But then the next day, I made in like Troy Deeney on Talk Sport, which the station obviously we've kind of loved in the past, but he's saying stuff like, which I was really shocked. He says, well, the footballers have had so much taken away from them, so they should be allowed to decide whether they carry on, which I could not believe, and kind of throw into the other mix and that as well, maybe kind of going off tangent, like with the kind of dementia and the heading of the football. Well, I think what I'm trying to say is football just seems to be clueless in looking after head injuries. I mean, the Super League stuff I've seen this season, they're really, really good on it. Off they come, they've got to have the assessment, and they don't come back. You lose players and stuff like that as well. Football just seems to be, you all right, mate? Yeah, he's a key player. Sling back on. It's been like that for years, and it's got to stop. It's absolutely scandalous what happened on Sunday. Why a football? With all the money, just see the players as. I'm just hoping Sundays is a watershed moment where there's some rule come on, because they can't have that. Matt.
I'm with you, Kosi. I'm with you. Sunday was one of those days, wasn't it? I'm a big Formula One fan, and I'd just watched Roman Grosjean, what I thought was die in front of me in a ball of flames, and somehow miraculously made his way out of that. So it'd been a stressful afternoon enough as it was as a Formula One fan, and then flipped over to watch that, and then 10 minutes into the game, it's quite early on, wasn't it? That happens, and as you say, Matt, the noise was horrendous. But I'm from the fallout from it, Kosi, I'm absolutely with you. I think it fundamentally has to be taken away from the players. There has to be independence, assessing this. It's as simple as that. You cannot allow an incident like that to happen where one guy heads another guy and one of them fractures their skull. And so there's that much force involved. And then one of them is allowed to carry on playing. The one without the fractured skull. It's scandalous.
It's a Premier League football game. It's not Leeds and Districts Sunday morning. It would a Premier League football game when you've got the.
I think they deal with it better. Leeds and Districts, I think they would. I think they deal with it better on a Sunday morning in some ways, because there's less pressure around it to have that player out there. I think he should have been hauled off there and then. And I think you're right. Super League do it really well. And in some ways, Super League do a lot of things really well, don't they? They do video refereeing quite well, and football could take quite a few pages out of the book of Super League. And I think head injuries is one of them as well.
Pozzo, what are you making of all this stuff at the moment? It just seems really, really sad. And obviously the findings are still looking into, and start with Jeff Aslan, sadly, Nobby Stars, Bobby Charlton, Jack Charlton. But when you've beaten the National Football Museum and we've all beaten some football museums. You look at them balls and you laugh, don't you? But now it's really sad because Gareth Southgate did an interview I read today, and he was saying he knows the risks of football, and if he gets the kind of dementia, I hate to even say it, but he's like, I kind of knew the risks I was getting into, but should we, I don't know, junior football, Jeff Hurst were very vocal and said you shouldn't be heading balls at that age and stuff. How do you feel? You do a lot of junior football stuff, mate.
Yeah, I think, like you say, the older players had to put up with the big leather balls. I mean, they're heavy enough as they are, let alone on a wet pitch. So, it soaks up the water, covered in mud. Back in the day, it's easy to see why, repetitive heading of a ball like that. You've got to think as well back. Compare a modern day match to an old match, even sort of 60s and 70s. There's a lot more long balls. The tactic then basically will hoof it up to a big guy up front and let him head it. So you could be looking at a striker heading ball 20, 30 times. There were, because I knew we were going to talk about it. There were a study done in 2016, and on average there's 111 headers per game. It averages about six a game per player. Looking, if you play 300 games in your career, they worked out you're heading it 2,000 times. Now in today's match balls, some of them they're no more heavy than those old 99p flyaway balls we used to call them. That used to buy on Scarborough Seafront that you spent more time running after than you did playing with. So sort of modern day players, I don't think the heading of the football at an elite level is such an issue. Talking about kids, one of the arguments that you hear from your grassroots is I do under 12s. And even at under 12s level, very, very rarely will anybody head it. Because it don't get that high. You probably get a corner. If there's 6 corners in a match, the delivery is not good enough for someone to run on and head it to start with. Players aren't used to it. So, there's a lot of them, even at 12-year-olds, still sort of shy away from it. When I've done coaching in the past, heading it is a big part of the game, set pieces, centre half, centre forward. Still, people need to learn how to edit. So I've done sessions where I've used balloons, so you can get the technique. You can do the defensive, you can do an attacking header. You're not really hurting yourself. I've used smaller, softer balls. So they talk about taking away from grassroots players, and then people moan that no one will be heading it and no one will be good at that. There's ways and means around it quite easily. Like I say, buy a bag of balloons and do the old keepy uppy like you used to do in your front room, and you can perfect a technique just by doing that. You don't need to be heading an actual football. So I think banning it altogether for grassroots, it's not going to make that much difference to how games are played out. To be fair, you can't. What happens if it does go up in A? You've got to be able to edit to get to an elite level. So it's 6 1 half a dozen other sometimes. But coming back to your original point. Doctors, there's a club doctor on every bench, 2, maybe even 3 sometimes. If that man who was a qualified doctor walks onto a pitch and says to a footballer, "I'm sorry, mate, you're coming off," the player comes off.
Yeah. It depends what pressure's there under as well.
The game would have been called off.
They're under pressure. I read
Yeah.
Mourinho had put in a book or something. He'd be like, say, doctor. I think he surely said they sacked a doctor. There's a manager who sacked a doctor for bringing a player off, which is incredible. But like you said, John, it should be. I'm sure it was, but it should be in their hands.
The female one, didn't he?
It should be in their hands.
There needs to be in the same way the officials are independently placed there by the FA. There needs to be a doctor or whatever they want to call the person, an assessor, that if there is a head injury, that person is the one who makes the call, and they'll get criticised. Of course they will. Referees get criticised, linesmen get criticised. Yeah. All those guys sat down in Stockley and get criticised, but there has to be an independent person. The club doctors do brilliant jobs, and this isn't me belittling at all, but sometimes you don't know what behind scene pressures they're under. And also you don't know, if they're also a supporter of that football club, or they've worked at that football club, or it's beneficial for that football club to have that player still out on the field, and it's beneficial therefore them to be out there on that, to be making a decision to keep the player on the field. You don't know. There's all those little things that come into it. So for me, there has to be someone independent there, placed there specifically for when there's a head injury, you go and see him, and you don't come back on until he says you're right to come back on.
Yeah, I think
I'd agree with that, Cos. Yeah, I'd agree with that fully. I was going to say, when you mentioned it, there's a club doctor there or an assessor, and you need an independent to make that call. There's obviously going to be people going, "Oh, he's a Man United fan, oh, he's a Liverpool fan," etc. You'll always get that, but I think it's as good as what you're going to get. And I think the other point I would have made is that we need to maybe stop glorifying, the Terry Butcher with the headband full of blood. I know it's a sign of masculinity, isn't it? And like fierce competitiveness. I think maybe at that time, great it was, and he led us to, I think, qualifying for the World Cup, didn't he, or something through that. But I think maybe now, I think people who come off with injuries, like take the boxer for example. I don't know if you guys watch boxing, but there was Joe Joyce versus Daniel Dubois on BT at the weekend, and he went down. He took a knee because he'd damaged his eye, and he was getting shooting pains through his eye. And all the way through, everyone's going, "Oh, he's a quitter. He's quit. He's sat down. He's never going to win a world title." Yeah, he took some pelters and Kell Brook. Everyone knows who Kell Brook is.
Yeah.
He had 2 orbital bone breaks, didn't he? And everyone's
both
going,
sides, didn't he? He did it both sides.
He can't handle so and so and so and so. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's got to stop. That kind of. I know our mate Freddie Cocker, if he was here, he'd be lecturing us on toxic masculinity, and he'd be right. And that kind of thing's probably got to stop to allow things to move forward. And it's difficult because football is, very sort of masculine and very sort of a game whereby it's a game of one-upsmanship. You've got to be tougher, you've got to be stronger, and then to come off because you've got a headache, people will. It's difficult, isn't it? But I think really we've got there by it's okay to be injured, and at the minute it feels like if you're injured, it's really odd because you watch Jack Grealish and Patrick Bamford and all these Premier League players. The wind will go past them and there's a triple pirouette, and they're on the floor rolling around, and that's all right. But you injure your head seriously, and you've got to come, and you're a wimp for going off. It's weird. It's such a weird dynamic.
It is, because
I think that essentially has got to stop, and so is the diving.
Yeah, when you watch rugby league, I think because it's so noticeable. Like when you watch a game Friday, Saturday, but the trainers, I know it's a different game, but they run on straight away. It's not a referee to come on, lad, he's all right. Because the trouble is, referees got to assess whether someone's cheated, and then come on. And rugby league, you pretty much know if someone's down there, they're hurt. So it's. I mean, God, we saw last week the grand final player broken jaw played a game, and so suppose sometimes they play.
But I suppose you can also in rugby league. In rugby league, you can be behind the play, can't you? Though in football, that's not something. That
they can run on while the game's going on, can't they? You see them in the yellow T-shirt, don't you, and everything. They run on. But I'm just wary of the time, Kosi, just for wrapping up on this one.
Some good will definitely come out. I think that'll be a watershed moment that I'd really think something will change because of that Sunday night. So just hope he's all right. Sounds like he's feeling a bit better, him, and so hopefully a couple of weeks back on the field or whatever.
Best wishes to, I don't think we'll have any Wolves fans listening, or even him, but best wishes to him from everyone.
So 2 home games coming up, innit, guys? But sadly, no turnstile clicking for us. But about QPR Wednesday, you look at them and you think they could be 6 points, but the Championship is a strange beast, isn't it? So I wouldn't want to say.
I think that'll be covered on the old preview pods, Matt. Have we got any coming up this week?
Yeah, we're recording tomorrow, so we'll do the QPR one, and keep your eyes out for that one. Yeah.
Good stuff. Anybody listening, then there you go. Listen to that for your preview.
Johnny, John Smith's on Saturday for you, or
where am I this weekend? I'm in the studio because Chelsea won't let me in. They're only giving us 2 passes. So Chelsea against Leeds on Saturday for me, but then I'm at the John Smith's on Tuesday for the Wednesday game. So I'll be down there taking on all my old South Yorkshire cohorts, and no doubt Dom Howson, who many of you may well know as the Sheffield Wednesday writer, is a secret Huddersfield Town fan. So he'll find that one interesting as well. So if you need someone to talk about that one, guys, that would be my suggestion. I've got his number. Let me know. I'll pop it over.
And hopefully John will bring us luck, because last time he did a Sheffield Wednesday Huddersfield game in the playoffs, Colin Quanner, Johnny was maybe of Sheffield, and he was interviewing Carlos, who had a face like a... and we were off to Wembley. Yeah,
I was there. You were on your way, boys. Yeah,
I know. And we don't want to tell what's happened since, but we had a good time, didn't we? But like we have tonight. So I will wrap it up there, guys, and say
sing us out, Kosi. It's Christmas is coming up, and we need a few carols.
Oh God!
And not just lighting.
We've got one, carol lighting. There we go. A nice little pun there.
Carol lighting. Yeah, God. Pause of that. That's as good as it'll get. But cheers and.
There's a team that is dear to its followers. The colours are bright blue and white. a team of renown, and they're the pride of the town. And the game of football is their delight. And all the while upon the field of play, thousands loudly cheer them on the way. Often you can hear them say, who can beat the town today? And then the bells will ring so merrily, and every goal shall be a memory. So town, play up and bring that cup back to Huddersfield. So town, play up and bring the cup back to Huddersfield.